What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Turn the Jets Live. I'm your host, Steven Zantz, joined by my co-host, Steven Russo. We have a very, very special guest, our fearless leader, the boss man of both Turn on the Jets and Badlands. Look at his shirt. Make sure you go buy one of those. Joe Caporoso, what's up, buddy?
What is up? I'm happy to finally be on. You guys are doing a great job here. Excited to get my inaugural appearance on TOJ Live.
It won't be the last. We promise you, everybody.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm ready to go.
There we go. Well, Joe, thanks so much for jumping on, man. We're stoked to have you here. I guess biggest news that I really want to kick it off with is just your general thoughts on the Morgan Moses signing. So late last week, that news broke. Joe Douglas gets it done. What do you think about the signing?
Very encouraging that they actually got this done, because it does usually feel like around this time of the year, there's like a player or two that the Jets are rumored to potentially be in on, and then it never seems to break their way. And you know, with Moses, he was a guy that when he was released a while ago, it really turned a lot of heads because he started every game over the past 4 or 5 seasons and played at a high level at, you know, a premium position on the offensive line. And I think while George Fant was pretty good last year, maybe better than we expected, there's still obvious flaws in his game, and you have to worry about the depth of the tackle position. So to be able to go get a proven starter at a critical position that's going to help Zach Wilson this late in the offseason was a very encouraging sign. And it came right on the heels of what I thought was a very savvy move on saving some money on Jamison Crowder's contract and making him more appealing as a potential trade deadline guy you can move for a late round draft pick if things are breaking right with Elijah Moore and Keelan Cole early in the season. But with Moses, I think he plugs in, gives you one of the better starting tackle duos in the NFL, potentially one of the best if Mekhi Becton takes that big leap forward in year 2, and slides George Fant down into being one of the better backup tackles in the NFL, a guy who started every game last year, who has experience being the extra tight end tackle and heavy sets. And if Becton or Moses miss a couple games, you feel a lot better about George Fant starting than, you know, Chuma Doga or Connor McDermott or whoever else the other top backup tackle was going to be. So there's a good trickle down effect to the depth overall, and not crazy money they paid Moses. You know, they gave him a 1-year deal. I think they were excited to have him in the mix for Wilson's rookie year. He wants to prove his level of play and then see if he can get a longer term deal, whether that's here or whether that's somewhere else. So a win-win for both sides. And when you look at the offensive upgrades as a whole with Moses factored in, it's pretty striking how much they've added to this unit in totality, from receiver to running back to offensive line between Moses and Vera Tucker. They really did make over this entire unit and set up Zach Wilson for success much better than they did for Sam Darnold or any of the other starting quarterbacks they've had in recent years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Steven, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, Joe definitely hit it on the head. I mean, I think one of the cool things that we were talking about actually in our Slack chat from that, it was a little nugget that Will got from somebody in the Washington locker room, is that the locker room was crushed when Morgan Moses was cut. He seemed like he was like one of the main leaders in that locker room. And to me, that kind of just speaks volumes to what Joe Douglas looks for in a player, whether it's in the draft, free agency, or even a trade. He wants high character players that everyone wants to, run through a wall for, and really guys who everyone wants to play with. So to me, it just seems like a slam dunk. Whether it works out or not, we don't know. It could be Ryan Khalil, or it could be, he could be really good. We don't really know, but I think he's a little bit younger. He's durable, which I think is the number one thing, especially when you have a rookie quarterback. You want to make sure he's protected. You want to make sure that everybody that's blocking for him is also going to be out there, because we saw with Becton last year, whenever he was out there, he was great, but, he did get banged up a lot, and now he has a lingering foot issue. So it's, and like Joe said, like having that flexibility, having Fant, playing like, that big tight end guy or even the swing tackle, I think it's great. I feel a lot more comfortable if Becton goes down and we have Fant playing left tackle next to Vera Tucker. So yeah, I'm super excited about it too.
Got some Khalil PTSD there. I forgot about that.
Sorry, Joe.
No, I mean, I think you both bring up good points. I think really you have to kind of step back and appreciate that Joe Douglas, one of probably the biggest thing that he came in here and set out to do was rebuild that offensive line. And essentially in 2 off seasons, he's pretty much done it. So when Greg Van Roten is your worst offensive lineman, you hear people like Damian Woody, Joe, you had him on where he says, you're only as good as the guy next to you. So hopefully now 4 to 5 are solid starters or better. So you hope that they can kind of elevate the play of Greg Van Roten. So when you also hear Mike LaFleur talk about how they're going to be kind of a run first team and use that to set up the pass, and Morgan Moses excels in the run game. And then you kind of see if maybe he can use his creativity to use George Fant and his mobility as a sixth lineman in some sets. Like it's pretty exciting. So I think it was a huge thing for Joe Douglas to get done. I think it's a nice sigh of relief because now 4 out of 5 starters are, I think, better than average.
Yeah, for sure. So now that domino has fallen, there's the other thing that's looming over the team beside the quarterback situation, which we don't think is going to be addressed anytime soon. It's the backup quarterback. So, right now it's Mike White or James Morgan. I know Connor's very high on that James Morgan take because he loved him in the draft. He didn't love him coming to the Jets, but he loved him, so he wants him to do well. So Nick Foles is the most popular guy that is connected to the team, mainly because his ties to Philadelphia with Joe Douglas. He knows the system, playing in Philadelphia, playing in Chicago. He's been in that type of system. So Joe, what would you give up in a trade for Nick Foles? I know it probably wouldn't be a lot because you're absorbing the salary, but what's something that's reasonable that if that happened, you'd be like, okay, I can live with this.
I mean, I think it's got to be a late day 3 pick, probably with something conditional attached to it. I do really think at this point, the Jets are going to let James Morgan play a lot in the first 2 preseason games, see if he looks completely overwhelmed and completely out of place, and then make a call later in the preseason if they want to bring a veteran in. I don't think a guy like Foles or maybe a guy like Brian Hoyer, if he gets cut from not making the Pats 53, needs a ton of training camp time. You're bringing him in there because they have starting experience. If Wilson goes down for a game or 2, they could run in and not be totally overwhelmed by the moment. But I do think, we like to joke that, James Morgan was Adam Gase's pick, and he very well may have been, but they did use a 4th round pick on him. So I'm sure they're going to want to give him an extended look in the preseason. They're not going to play Wilson, I think, too much in the preseason. And there is definitely a world, I think, where, and I may not agree with the strategy, where Morgan is okay in the preseason. They're like, you know what, we're just going to hang on to him as our backup. And if something serious happens to Wilson, then maybe we see what else is out there. And then we're more proactive in going to get Foles. But I'm not necessarily anticipating some big aggressive move to bring him in. Although I understand Jet fans being nervous about that because we've seen what's happened when Sam Darnold's been banged up. But the reality is, if Zach Wilson's missing, 3, 4, 5 games, it's probably going to be a rough season regardless. And it's going to be disappointing, no matter what. I think, we felt kind of good about the backup situation in 2018 with McCown because he was actually decent in 2017 and they still went 0-3 with him under center. And then obviously, it was a disaster with Falk and Simeon the year after. And then even last year, Flacco, he's an experienced backup, and at times he was better than Sam, but they still lost every game. So I'm not expecting that aggressive of a move for Foles. I think they're going to kind of wait it out. I think you could see a guy like Hoyer or another veteran cut after the second preseason game. And maybe they make a move at that point if Morgan is struggling, but I'm not expecting some big aggressive move for the veteran QB.
Yeah. What do you think, Steven? Similar thoughts?
Similar thoughts. Yeah, I think, they're kind of looking at the quarterback position similar to the corner position, where it's you're going to get these young guys in OTAs, minicamp, and then training camp as many reps as you can to see what you have. I think the difference is that cornerback, it seems like, the more we find out, Saleh's going to let that ride out and play the young guys, but quarterback, they'll probably make a move. So I think Foles is probably the likely guy, but I agree with Joe. If Zach Wilson goes down within a significant amount of time, we're screwed. But you do need some guy that can maybe come in for, half a game or a game and a half and at least make it serviceable. Because I think if we have Mike White or James Morgan under center for any significant time, it's not going to be good for the Jets.
Definitely. And yeah, that's my biggest worry. I think whether they make a trade or not, I also could see, like Joe said, maybe even when it's cut day and after the preseason is over, somebody who has experience could be let go. And Foles could very well be that guy. I mean, they're already paying Andy Dalton a lot. You have Justin Fields, who I think they're hoping wins the job outright. I think that he at least sits at least 1 to 2 games, but they could just be like, screw it, we're just going to eat the money for Foles and he can go wherever he wants. So anything's possible.
Yeah. So, Joe, kind of a more broad line question for you that I've honestly been dying to ask you here. So I think it's no secret you've kind of coined the phrase that you're a very pragmatic Jets fan. You're realistic and objective, even though this is the team that you root for. But I think some people, especially in the world of Twitter, can confuse that with being negative. But I think we've all seen kind of the tide turn over the course of the last, 5 or 6 months. So kind of talk to me about your newfound optimism here and how you feel about the Jets since they fired Adam Gase and everything that's gone on since January.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the hardest part of the past, I guess it's been 5 years now, is that I thought that as long as the Jets had either Mike McCagnon or Adam Gase in a prominent role, they were never going to win anything of consequence. And they continued to make mistake after mistake. And really, once 2016 started to turn south, there was no point in any of those following seasons where the Jets were a serious football team. They were the worst team in the NFL, basically, along with the Giants over that stretch. So I found it very hard to act like the organization knew best, or the GM knew best, or the coaching staff knew best. And, I understood why they got rid of Bowles. I was annoyed that they didn't get rid of McCagnon at the same time, because McCagnon he did more damage than any one individual to this 10-year playoff drought, because of how long he was here, how many bad picks he made, and because he ultimately did pull the trigger along with Chris Johnson on the Adam Gase hire. And, that process was kind of a nightmare, because I was not alone in this sentiment. There was just not a single person I wanted them to hire less than Gase. You could see the writing on the wall. You could see it was going to be an unmitigated disaster. And it was frustrating to an extent in 2019 that some were getting overly excited about what was very clearly a fraudulent 7-9 when you look at how some of those wins came together. And I didn't think they were going to be 2-14 last year. I thought they were going to be more like 5-11. But I was kind of worried about that 5-11, because if they went 5 or 6 games, I was worried they may give that Gase-Darnold situation another year. So they were tough years, because you start 0-8, you start 1-7 2 years in a row. These seasons are over right away. And it's just hard to act like you're excited about this, because the team was apparently just so clearly rudderless. Now, with Joe Douglas, I think I was excited when they made the hire. I think he treated last year like an evaluative season, where he clearly did not seem like he was fully bought in on Adam Gase and Sam Darnold. And I think they were also still dealing with an interim owner situation and kind of hedged their bets with their spending. But the big moves that he's made, and now increasing with more frequency, I've liked a lot. I was aligned with trading Leonard Williams for what they got him, aligned with trading Jamal Adams rather than paying him what he looked to be paid. Obviously, loved going offense with the first 4 picks in the NFL draft, and then trading Sam Darnold for what they traded him for. And then the coaching hire is when I really started to get excited, because Saleh was really one of the top tier candidates out there. And the Jets were, despite casting a wide net, very proactive in getting the job done and casting that wide net, and then going to land a tier A candidate, not getting some retreat or someone that we all had to pretend we were excited about. I think there's genuine reason to be excited about the quality of hire. And I love how he's went about building his staff compared to what we saw with Gase and Lockins. One of the little things that drove me crazy is that after they had the worst offense in the NFL, they made no serious changes to their coaching staff, especially their offensive coaching staff. It was just Gase and Loggins, and that was it. You look at how deep this staff is now. They bring LaFleur over as their offensive coordinator. They also bring in Greg Knapp as a passing game consultant. They bring in Calabrese as a quarterback coach. They bring in a time management coach to layer on top of that. And then defensively, you have Saleh managing the whole team, not going to be focusing on being a defensive coordinator who's calling the plays. So they built the staff in a much more comprehensive way. And the synergy with Douglas feels a lot better. And then I loved how they handled the draft. The first 4 picks, I think, were all great value. I think they had more than enough capital to proactively go get AVT, a player who I wanted more than anyone with that second first-round pick. So the fact that they went and got him got me that much more fired up. And I did not think Moore would be there at 34 for them, and he was, and they took him, and then they got the benefit of having Carter in the 4th round. So that type of offensive investment to go with what I think was outside. I mean, I was obviously very excited about Carl Lawson, like the Corey Davis signing. I think the rest of free agency was like, okay. I wasn't like amazing, wasn't the greatest free agency period, which is fine. But I think when you look at what they did in free agency now, coupled with Morgan Moses, coupled with the NFL draft, it's hard to say they didn't have a very good offseason. And I can't remember the last time we could say that about them because, yes, you could look back to the offseason with Mosley and Bell, but they so clearly had to pay a Jets tax on those contracts. And while those guys at the time were great players, they non-premium positions, a middle linebacker and a running back. And this year, that big money goes to an edge rusher and Carl Lawson. It goes to a wide receiver to directly support Zach Wilson. And then with the draft, you just look at what Joe Douglas has done. He's taken more offensive players in the first 2 rounds and 2 drafts than every Jet GM in like the last 15 years combined. So offensive line, quarterback, receiver, packing these early picks with positions that we've talked about forever. It's just you're seeing a lot of the stuff that we complained about actually being executed. Now, they still need to win games, right? They're going to be picked to be last in the AFC East, and I think that's fair until they prove otherwise. Buffalo, Miami, New England are probably better than them on paper. Definitely Buffalo is, and I think you can make a fair case that New England and Miami are. That doesn't mean that they can't steal some games from them. It doesn't mean that they can't overachieve on that 6.5 over-under win total. But I think at a minimum, you're going to see a competitive team who's not laying down and dying every week and could be an entertaining 7-10, maybe 8-9, and then is clearly laying the groundwork to compete to be a playoff team in 2022, which I think is a fair expectation to hold them to.
Yeah, no, Joe, you brought up a lot of good points. And I know a lot of people think that you are negative, but I think you're just objective. And that's how I like to look at it. Of course, I want to get giddy and get excited, but you have to look at it that way. So when you're just talking about the win total, something interesting that I was listening to on the Ringer NFL show is they were doing like AFC over-unders, like which teams will go over. The first team they actually did was the Jets, and it was 4 people who were doing it. And actually 3 out of the 4 said they would go over. They loved everything that the Jets have done, specifically hiring, Robert Saleh and what Joe Douglas has done. And I think you just nailed everything. And I'm hoping that when you look back 2 years from now, when we're in 2023, that this was the beginning of us really becoming a playoff contender and maybe pushing to go to a Super Bowl. I like to think of it as, like when the Saints had that really good draft where they had Alvin Kamara, Ramczyk, who just got that $90 million deal. And they got like 3 other guys, Lattimore and somebody else who I'm missing. I'm hoping that this draft class is going to be the equivalent for the Jets where, we have Wilson, we have AVT, we have Elijah Moore and Carter. Those 4 guys can be contributors from day one. And maybe some of the late guys, like some of the corners or, the defensive guys can actually contribute as well. So I'm super excited. My expectations aren't super high. Like you said, I think we do finish in 4th, unfortunately, but there's a chance that we could be 3rd. I mean, we really don't know what New England's going to be. They spent a lot of money, but some of those signings are pretty questionable. And if Mac Jones is playing, I mean, we don't really know how good he's going to be. And Cam was really bad last year. Like, people forget that. I know they went 7-9, but Cam was pretty bad other than like the first 2 games.
Yeah. I think from a Jets fan standpoint, I obviously I don't think that Joe Douglas is sitting there and looking back at every move that Mike McCagnon made and John Idzik made and saying, okay, I got to do the exact opposite. But really, from our standpoint, it kind of seems like that, and it just seems like he gets it. Like he's learning from the past mistakes of these regimes that preceded him, and he's doing everything differently and starting to build it the right way. Case in point, what he's doing with Zach Wilson right now and building an offensive line and giving him weapons and actually building a team around him that will set him up for success. So it's hard to not be excited right now. It really just feels like they have learned from the past decade of just complete ineptitude, and they're starting to do things the right way. And that's why the Jets fans and Joe C feels optimistic about this upcoming year and this regime. So
it's a fun overdue feeling. And I think with New England, like you said, I mean, they could very well struggle heavily at quarterback. I certainly think, and I could be wrong, that Zach Wilson will be a much better pro quarterback than Mac Jones. I don't know how much Cam has left in the tank. So for the Jets, if they could just even go 2-4, God forbid 3-3 in the division, that would be a very big step forward. They're 3-15 in the division over the last 3 years. So
sad.
They go 2-4 in the division. You beat Houston, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Carolina, and maybe you get an upset in there somewhere else like that. That's how you get to 7 wins. And it would be good even in the losses potentially in the AFC East if they could, be competitive and not have these games where they lose, 24-0 to Miami or by 35 to New England, in prime time.
Yeah. So here's a question for both of you, and I'll start with Steven. Who's someone that's more under the radar that you think could surprise some people on the team that, maybe the expectations aren't super high and they become, maybe like a fan favorite, kind of like, what happened with Derrick Rose with the Knicks, just somebody who no one expected to be like this really fun player and everyone gets excited about him, especially as we head to the end of the season.
So, it's a really good question. And I'm honestly going to go with one of the new guys. And I think it's an under the radar signing, but I think it's LaMarcus Joyner. I think him returning to his normal position, starting opposite Marcus May. And then when you look at the Jets' current corner situation and really what Ashton Davis could possibly do in this scheme and being that kind of Swiss Army knife, and LaMarcus Joyner allowing him to do that, I think he could have a lot of success in the system. I think he could be one of those under the radar guys that come, mid-season, we're really kind of applauding Joe Douglas for making that move.
Yeah. What about you, Joe?
I do really like the Joyner call. I think he's going to have a much bigger role on defense than some may be anticipating, just because I don't know if Ashton Davis is really ready to be a full-time starter yet. And there's just so much question marks at the cornerback, particularly slot cornerback position going forward. Offensively, I don't think we should forget about Ty Johnson in the backfield. I know we're all excited about Michael Carter. I am. I do still think Johnson is going to be a big part of the mix there, and I think has the right speed and skill set for the zone-based running scheme that the Jets are going to have. So he is someone I would keep an eye on, and I think while fans are way overreacting with their Denzel Mims takes, I do think Keelan Cole is going to be a really valuable, versatile piece of that receiver group because he could play inside and outside, and I think they will find a way to manufacture some targets for him. And if Davis goes down for a week or two, he could plug in on the outside. If they end up, trading Crowder and Mims and Moore's playing a little bit on the outside, you could slide Cole in the slot. So I think he'll carve out a nice role. So I think him and Johnson are going to be valuable role players on offense, despite, not maybe necessarily being top tier names or the lead receiver or the lead rusher.
Mm-hmm. You guys are going to be very surprised with my answer because I know that you guys did not think of this guy. So I think it's actually going to be Justin Hardy. You're probably like, why would it be him? He's going to basically be our best special teams player. And I mean, I've read about him, I got really excited when they showed like the video of him signing. He seems like the kind of guy who's just going to do like the dirty work. He's always going to make those plays on punt return and kick returns. And, he has like that mentality. And, I think that people don't think about special teams, how important it is, but it is important. Like I remember one year, the Chargers had the number one offense, the number one defense, but their special teams was atrocious and they didn't even make the playoffs. So think about that. And the one thing that's actually, which people kind of gloss over this a little bit, is Brant Boyer is not a bad coordinator. He's survived like 3 regimes. Clearly, people like him. So I think that, getting someone like Justin Hardy is definitely going to be really strong for Brant Boyer because I think he's done great work despite being on terrible staffs and having terrible bosses. So I'm super excited to see what he can do. And, maybe if he shows something in the preseason, maybe he can help out in the cornerback room. But I think he's probably strictly relegated to special teams.
Oh, that's a good point. It's hard to disagree there, but so I want to switch gears a little bit. We kind of brought it up here earlier, but I think it's safe to say that on paper, at least, Joe Douglas has made significant upgrades to really 3 units, especially over years past. So you talk about the offensive line. We mentioned that what he's done really 4 out of 5 starters. You talk about the receiving core and what that looks like right now versus what it looked like week 1 of last year. And then you also talk about strengthening a strength in the defensive line with the additions of an actual edge in Carl Lawson, getting Sheldon Rankin, signing Vinny Curry. So of those 3 groups, which are you most excited about and do you think will have the biggest impact on the team in 21?
I mean, we've had so many seasons where the Jets defensive line looks incredible on paper and it kind of ultimately underwhelms a little bit. They had like that one game, I think it was the season opener against Cincinnati where they had like 41 sacks and they somehow still lost, but
2016.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, that the front group could be scary good. And unlike other years, they really have the edge, depth, and talent to complement the interior pass rush. They've always had an interesting group of interior pass rushers, back to Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson and Damian Harrison. I think when you look now to add a guy like Sheldon Rankins, who has such a high ceiling, to be able to roll through with Quinnen Williams, who really should be an all-pro player this year if everything goes the way it should. And then to have Lawson, a guy who has the talent to be a legitimate 10-sack guy, is something they haven't had in a while. and it goes beyond that because you have a good traditional nose tackle in Foley Fatukasi. You have Vinny Curry as a situational edge rusher. You have John Franklin Myers, who is really popped in a limited role and should be a great fit in the scheme and can move all over the formation. And then you still even have further depth with a guy like Bryce Huff and Kyle Phillips, who have played pretty well in limited roles. And then you have Jabari Zuniga, who was a third-round pick last year. You don't want to write off already. He's going to have a tough time breaking through with this rotation. But look at that top-tier group of Quinnen, Rankins, Lawson, Curry, Franklin Myers. They're going to be able to get after the quarterback. And that's why I think they're being not panicking as much at cornerback. And I think there's certain weeks it's going to work and they're going to be able to get home to the quarterback, or they're going to be playing a below average quarterback who's going to just struggle with their pass rush. Hopefully that's week 1 with Sam Darnold. There's going to be other weeks it's going to burn them where they're not going to get home and their cornerbacks are going to get eaten alive by some of the receiver groups they play. And that's going to be part of the experience this year. And it's why we're picking them to go 7-10 or 8-9 and not 11-6, because they do still have some gaps on that defense, but that pass rush should be legitimately excellent if everyone stays healthy. And Quinnen and Lawson in particular, both should be in Pro Bowl and all pro discussions if everything goes well in the way it should.
Yeah.
You nailed it. I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. I mean, offense for me, this is the most excited I've been about the offense really since 2015 when we had Marshall and Decker and Ivory, who basically were all awesome. And it was just fun because we actually scored points. And I know your favorite thing to say is pretty much like once a week points, just showing people points. Cause like Adam Gase was like allergic to scoring points. I think though, the thing I'm most excited about is the receiving room. I know there's not like this like bona fide number one guy that, belongs in the category with like a Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill or DeAndre Hopkins, but they're deep. They have competent players. If somebody gets hurt, I don't think that they're really going to struggle in that area because they do have the depth. Like Keelan Cole is probably their 5th receiver. He's been a starter in Jacksonville. I know it's Jacksonville, but he's had experience getting reps and, doing things. He's really athletic. He's fast. And that's the other thing. They have a lot of speed with Elijah Moore. Obviously, Berrios is very fast. I wouldn't categorize Crowder as super fast. He's more like quick and like deceptive because he's not like, a 4-3 guy, but he's just shifty. And I'm really happy they ended up keeping him. I know that there's a lot of conversation about maybe getting rid of him. It's still in play, if maybe a contender wants him and Joe Douglas sees a way to get like, a 3rd or 4th round pick. 3rd is probably a little aggressive, but 4th round is not unrealistic for a team that's trying to win a championship. But yeah, Zach Wilson's actually set up to succeed. And the one thing you could say about him, whether it works or it doesn't, is that if it doesn't work, it's not going to be because the Jets didn't give him every chance to succeed. You can't say that about Geno Smith. You can't say that about Sam Darnold. I guess Sanchez you can because they did give him a roster. But I think if Zach Wilson struggles, it's because he's just not an NFL quarterback. So, that to me is like you don't have to have those like weird conversations that we had about Darnold. You're like, he flashes, but you know what? Maybe the supporting cast wasn't good enough. The coaching staff wasn't good enough. We won't have that with Zach Wilson. I feel confident enough in the skill players and also the staff that we're actually going to get a good read on him within 2 to 3 years. I'd say give him 3 years. I think after 3 years, you'll know or not. But I also don't think we should get too high if, he lights the world on fire, because once there's tape on you, defenses tend to adjust. Something that people are probably going to say about Justin Herbert. Can he do it again? So, I'm excited about the offense, still excited about the defense too, because I think the defense is going to be the strength of the team, but we will actually maybe score more than 12 points a game this season. So that's pretty good.
Well, this is good because honestly, I'm not just changing my answer because you guys went the opposite way, but I would have said the offensive line. And I think you kind of draw similarities from, going from Adam Gase to Robert Saleh, so knowing where you were to now where you are. Watching, that New England game Monday night 2 years ago where Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts and the Jets O-line couldn't pick up a 0 blitz. That was as bad as I've seen in my 35 years of being a Jets fan. So knowing now that we have 4 quality starters, plus Greg Van Roten, you have depth that we haven't had in a long time. And you couple that with a Mike LaFleur offense and John Benton coaching them, I think is a recipe for success here and something that I'm extremely excited about and could have a really, really good impact on this team in 21. So that was good. We went around the horn there. I like that.
It's good that there's multiple position groups to be legitimately excited about. And the fact that a few of them are on offense is very refreshing because this was legitimately an offense the past 2 years that averaged 1 touchdown a game, which is crazy, but it was legitimately true.
Like, I feel like Scott Hansen loved cracking jokes whenever the Jets were in the red zone. It's like, the Jets are in the red zone. Let's see what they can do here.
It's always the opening drive field goal and then like one touchdown randomly, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yep. No, man.
Cool. I have a different question. I think it's something you guys probably weren't expecting, but basically, if you could take any non-quarterback from any team and put them on the Jets, who would it be and why? So I'll start with you, Joe.
I saw this question a couple of days ago on Twitter, and I went with Trey White, and I got a couple responses like, why not Gilmore? Why not Howard? I think it's an age thing with White.
Oh, I wasn't saying just AFC East. I'm saying any player in the league.
Any player.
Yeah.
Man, that my mind still goes to, where are the Jets the weakest right now? And that's guard and that's cornerback. Man, I mean, Trey White's honestly still in the discussion for me because you want a top tier lead cornerback. I'd want to dive into the age of some of the top guards in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's guys out there.
But Nelson probably would be the guy if you had to pick a guard.
I mean, get the get right from the Darnold trade. I mean, to have Nelson and Nelson in the mix with AVT would certainly be in that discussion. I think it depends what young guard or what young cornerback you like the best, because those are the two ones I think you would look at. Maybe center, if you wanted to go get who is your favorite, young center in the NFL. And I think that's going to be a prime draft position for them next year. But I'm not too far off from still considering a guy like Trey White, because if they had a legitimate lead number one corner right now to go with this pass rush, this defense would really be complete. And then again, offensively, they're one very good to great interior offensive lineman from us having a discussion of them being near potentially that 2009, 2010 level. So, who's your favorite guard or center who's between 24 and 28? I think you can't go wrong there.
Definitely. Steven, what about you? I know I probably just put you on the spot a little bit.
You did. And honestly, I was kind of running through like who options could be. And I think there's I'm going to go not the safe route. I'm going to go a little more risky, but I look at the Jets, and I'm going to stick with offense because we love offense. And if I look at the Jets objectively, and the 1 point of weakness right now, even though we're members of the Herndon Hive here, is probably tight end. So if I could steal George Kittle, I think that'd be really fun. I mean, that a tight end is a young quarterback's best friend, and that George Kittle's had success in this offense. I mean, that'd be extremely fun to get Kittle away from San Fran and put him on the Jets. I think that'd be a good signing, man.
Yeah, no, both great answers. Somebody I was thinking about for you, Joe, you didn't say Jalen Ramsey. You wouldn't want Jalen Ramsey over Trey White? That's probably who I would pick if I had to pick a corner.
I mean, Ramsey certainly would be fun in this medium market, no doubt. And the Kittle answer, the Kittle or Kelsey, like having a dynamic, dominant tight end in this offense, I think is really unlocks it to a different level. And I think along with the other positions I mentioned, as much as I'm still not out on Chris Herndon, I think will also be another main target for them going forward. But I mean, to have a guy that kind of target for Wilson in the middle of the field to go with Davis and Mims and more on the outside is an exciting thought to have. So hopefully Herndon could just be, a version of himself that's not too different from 2018. I think that would be honestly more than enough right now, because I do think they're going to roll through a lot of different guys, and we'll see Wesco at fullback, and you'll see a little Croft. I don't know how much they're going to get out of Yeboah as an undrafted free agent, but tight end is an interesting thought.
Yeah. So I'll give you an offensive and defensive guy. So defense to me is the easiest choice, even though it's a position of strength. Aaron Donald, that guy controls the game more than anyone I've ever seen. I never watched Lawrence Taylor play, but I talked to my dad about it. He says he's the closest thing. You see that guy, he's literally in the backfield every single play. Basically, they have to scheme their offense around playing against Aaron Donald. To me, he's a difference maker. He's probably, honestly, beside Patrick Mahomes, the best player in the NFL. He is unbelievable and just so fun to watch. He's got good personality and everything.
Could you imagine him and Quinn Williams on the line together?
That would be awesome. But I will say this, he did have a tough time against Mekhi Becton. So that was like one of the best moments of the year last year. Becton did put him in his place. So I was excited about that. And then for offense, even though he's not the best receiver in the league, Tyreek Hill, same thing. The guy is just an absolute playmaker. I mean, he could burn any corner, any safety in the league. He does things that I've never seen players be able to do. I mean, like Devontae Adams is my favorite receiver. I mean, he's just so polished, with his route running. He's got good hands. But Tyreek Hill basically is like everything you want from a speed perspective. I mean, maybe Elijah Moore could be our version of Tyreek Hill. You never know. I mean, he's very quick, but yeah, Tyreek Hill is just like electrifying, which just make this team so much more fun to watch.
Perfect segue there, Steven, because I'm going to ask Joe if he thinks that Elijah Moore will break the curse of the second round pass catcher following Devin Smith, Jason Morrow, and Stephen Hill. What do you think? What do you think, Joe?
I do. I think Moore. I can't remember ever a Jets day 2 pick having such a positive consensus around them, not just from people who follow the Jets, just from like national people who cover the NFL. I mean, from when we talked to Nate Tice and Danny Kelly and anyone, Daniel Jeremiah about Moore, they just like light up talking about this guy's game. I just have not came across anyone who doesn't think that this guy has a chance to be a legitimate star in the NFL. So I think he will easily prove to be their best second round pick since David Harris and has a chance to maybe even eclipse that. And I think he's going to be like a Justin Jefferson year 1? Probably not because of the offense, because he doesn't have an Adam Thielen opposite him. I do think by next year, he will be their lead receiver. I think he will ramp into a bigger role as the season goes on, which will help funnel them, likely trading Crowder at the deadline. I think by the end of the year, he'll be right there with Davis in terms of target share. And I think he is a guy who will be an 1,000-yard receiver multiple times in the NFL and is just going to add a different dimension of big playability to this offense that they haven't had. And I've gotten a couple of tweets from, I'm assuming, younger fans who don't like the Santana Moss 2.0 comparison. And I think what you got to remember is, 1, 2.0 means a better version of that player. 2, Moss played in a different era and never played with great vertical quarterbacks and still went over 1,000 yards 4 times in his career and had a very long, productive career. The Jets get 5, 6, 1,000-yard plus seasons from Moore as a second round pick. I think we'd all be quite happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, also like younger fans, like what receivers other than like Don Maynard, like historically, did we really have the armies? I mean, Keyshawn was good, but he was the number 1 overall pick. He like wasn't what everyone hoped he'd be. He was a good player. He wasn't a great player. I know he won a Super Bowl elsewhere, but our history with the receivers is just not that great. So like saying Santana Moss is positive. So I just want the people who, go back at you at Twitter about that, just like relax. It's a good comparison. Santana was fun. He was fast. And I think that's really where the comparison is. It's the electricity. It's not necessarily like, the numbers. It's just that he had that big, deep threat ability. But like you said, we didn't have a downfield passing. Chad couldn't throw the ball more than 25 yards because of like 10 shoulder surgeries. I think people forget about that. And then when he was in Washington, he had Jason Campbell, guest of the show, who was more of a short intermediate guy, not necessarily a deep ball guy. But yeah, I mean, I think Elijah Moore is just going to be so fun. I mean, he's already like he's the first one in the building with Michael Carter. And like for a rookie to be doing that the guy's just different. Like usually rookies are not doing that. It's like a veteran type move. And that just gets me excited. He's a hard worker, good kid. Everyone says that he's just so dynamic and you could do so many different things with him. He's probably going to do some wildcat, some end around reverses, which is always fun. Maybe that special play that we did against the Rams in the game that we won, when it was like a backwards pass. That was like the best play we called all year. And it was, Adam Gase who called it. So it was kind of crazy.
I get the Elijah Moore excitement. I think it's not often you have so many people saying so many good things and in agreement on a player, and specifically a rookie and a second round wide receiver at that. But when any Jets player is getting comparisons to the likes of Antonio Brown, I mean, that's it makes me feel good. So I do think he's going to have an immediate impact. I also like that he's not just a slot guy. And, even in Flight 2021, you're hearing guys talk about how polished he really is, how he can line up all over the field, that he can use, on multiple dimensions. I mean, that's something that the Jets haven't had in a while. So I think he definitely will break the curse of the second round pass catcher here and eclipse Devin Smith, Jason Morrow, and Stephen Hill for us here.
Here's the bold prediction. He is going to be the first Jets player that people want to keep in their dynasty league drafts. I'm telling you, that's what it is. When was the last time we had someone that was drafted pretty late that people wanted to keep? I honestly couldn't even tell you. It's going to be him. So, target him in your drafts. I think that you'll be really happy with those returns. So Joe, I think you'll like this one a little bit, but you may be a little annoyed because you have to admit you were wrong on something. But this goes back a few years, basically to the Darnold draft. This is long before I was part of TOJ, which I've been very happy to be a part of. You and I both like Josh Rosen, number one. He was our QB1. We both were really wrong on this. We both also hated Josh Allen. Like, how does it feel that we were so wrong on both those guys? And obviously we ended up with Darnold. Like, it's always tough to admit when you're wrong. And I know that you're good at that. I think that you always are like, if you had a bad take, you'll own it. Like you're Sean McVay with the hot pocket take. I know that was your favorite one.
Love my friends from freezing cold takes. So it's always find a way to find it. Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, look, I think looking at the Rosen thing, I think, yes, it was just flat out wrong. And I think what I learned from that is that in today's NFL, you cannot be an immobile quarterback unless you have a ridiculous generational arm and really expect to succeed, unless you're in a perfect situation. So I think Rosen was a pure pocket passer, did not have the mobility to get himself out of trouble, and had a good arm, but certainly not a great or a top tier arm. And I think this is part of why Mac Jones is going to struggle. I think it's going to be kind of a similar deal where he is a pocket passer. He does not have an elite arm. And unless he ends up in a perfect situation, which maybe New England shapes up to be this year. I mean, it is New England, right? It's not, the Cardinals team or the Dolphins team that Rosen was on, but even with Darnold, at least he had some escapability. And you look at his highlights through 3 years, despite him being generally bad, they come from him being able to create, because you have to be able to maneuver around the pass rush and have a threat of using your legs to compete at quarterback at this level now. And I think with Allen, it's the same deal. It discounted how dominant he could be as a runner at this level. And even when he was awful throwing, which he was at times in his rookie year and even in year two, he was unstoppable as a runner. And it makes them so hard to defend because you could just spread the field and cover up everything perfectly. And you miss one tackle and he rips off a 26-yard run. And that opens up so many things. And to his credit, he has improved his accuracy, and the Bills have done a tremendous job building an offense curated to his strengths. And again, it was a deep class, and it was a tough class to suss out. And it was just, wrong on those guys, and made me look differently at guys who lack mobility. And I'm with Allen. Look, like Allen at a minimum is going to be a good starting quarterback for the rest of his career. I'm curious if there is some type of regression this year coming off of last year.
I think a little, definitely.
A little, it's just a matter of how much, but he is clearly, proven himself to be up there with Jackson in that quarterback class, ahead of Baker Mayfield, who I still think is good and probably gets too much crap. And then I think, Darnold's down, and then that much further down is Rosen, who I don't think will start any more games in the NFL.
I think the thing with Baker, why he gets a bad rap, is he talks a lot. And, he had that really bad sophomore season. I think he's okay. Like, he's like to me, he's a lot with maybe a stronger arm, Kirk Cousins. That's really what he is. You can win with him if you give him the right situation, which he has a great offensive line. He's got good skill position. I think Nick Chubb is like the top 5 running back. He's really, really tough. And obviously they have Kareem Hunt as well. But like, for me with Josh Allen, I think I was worried. I just felt like he was Paxton Lynch. That's what I thought he was. I'm like, he's got a really good arm, good size, athletic. And, he had accuracy problems. And to me, if you can't be accurate in college, it's like, what makes you think you'll be able to be accurate in the NFL? And I was wrong about him. And like you said, I think it's just the perfect storm of everything that Brandon Beane and, Sean McDermott built. They basically gave him the perfect situation. Like, I'd imagine if you put him in the same situation that Sam Darnold went to and put Darnold in his situation, Josh Allen's probably on his second team. I mean, I think situation matters. I mean, I heard this analogy on an NBA podcast. It's just like when you send a kid to a bad school, he could be like a good kid, but if you put him in a bad environment, he's probably not going to achieve his full potential. Whereas if you put him in a good school, he's probably going to achieve his potential. So, I mean, for me, like, I just think that Allen just went to a perfect situation. They curated, like you said, to everything that his strengths were. They figured out ways to hide his weaknesses. And ultimately, I think he just put in the work. And, athleticism definitely wins out in the NFL. I'll say that again.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the tale of two situations. And you don't want to absolve either of credit or responsibility, because Josh Rosen on the flip side hasn't done himself any favors. But if you look at the situations that he was put in, he wasn't really set up for success either. I mean, he went to the Cardinals, who were the worst team in the league, and then he gets traded year 2. And he's never been in a situation where he can even showcase. Granted, he hasn't been, he hasn't done anything with any opportunity that he's gotten. But I still think that if you were objectively to look at this, it's still an incomplete for Rosen. And I don't know, we're never going to find out.
Probably not.
It is, but to both your guys' points, yeah, situation is everything. I mean, and being a Jets fan, there's no way you can't look at what happened with Sam Darnold with the Jets and look at the Bills and what they did from a coaching standpoint to the players they signed, to the offense they built and tailored around Josh Allen, and not be jealous of it. Regardless of Zach Wilson now, but with Sam Darnold, I mean, every Jets fan that has a brain cell would look at that, that situation and say, man, I wish we had that. So much of it is situation. And I think Josh Allen's definitely made the best of his situation, but still they've surrounded him and put him in the right position to succeed.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, he proved me wrong. Let's see if he can do it again. I think he'll be pretty good this year, and they probably will win the division pretty comfortably. I still have questions about Tua. I mean, I don't think he's bad. I just don't know what he is yet. And I want to see, they obviously got him his receiver from college with Waddle. They got Will Fuller. So it's really put up or shut up for him, because I think if he can't put up with this offense, he's got an elite coach. I mean, I think Flores is a top 10 coach in the NFL. I know obviously they didn't make the playoffs and they choked in the last week of the season, but I think he's the guy that he's going to be there a long time. We're going to have to worry about Brian Flores. So, I mean, I'm excited. I just hope Mac Jones isn't any good, because I think New England deserves to be in last place for a little while. That's just my opinion.
I think we can all agree on that, definitely.
Joe's wife doesn't agree with that, because I believe she is a Pats fan.
Fortunately, she's not as far down the rabbit hole as the rest of the family. But yes, we've had more than enough of Patriots for one lifetime, without a doubt.
I'm like, it's kind of funny thinking that you're like one of the lead people on Jets Twitter, and you're with a Pats fan. Like, that's just.
This is how life works, man. You can't. I actually am, for the first time, I'm going to Gillette for Jets Pats this year. My brother-in-law got us tickets. So I've held off on going to a Jets Pats game for obvious reasons for a very long time. But this year I was like, you know what? Let's go. I feel a lot better about the team this year. I'm happy to go. I'll have the Badlands shirt on. No one there is going to know what the hell it means. So I'll just have it popped on, and I'll be ready to go and go to my first away game as a Jets fan, because I did get an offer from them to go to the playoff game in 2010, and I passed on it because I did not want to watch the Jets have a playoff game in New England. I just ended up watching it back in Hoboken with my cousin, and now I'm finally making the return that I should have went to that game, because that would have been great to celebrate the win in front of all of them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Totally. I can't believe you passed up that opportunity. That would have been amazing.
Now you forget they lost 41-3 to them like 7 weeks earlier. And if I had to watch that in person, surrounded by Pats fans, I don't know if I would have made it out.
I think if I went to that game, I may not have came out alive, because the amount of shit talking that I would have done, they would literally probably killed me.
Yes.
So Joe, I'm gonna go a little bit nostalgic here, but and give myself a shameless plug. So I wrote an article that got published today, how I think that Joe Douglas is kind of laying the groundwork to have a quote unquote Parcellsian effect on this team. So you guys both remember Parcells took over this team in '97. It was a terrible team, 4-32 in 2 seasons prior. Took it over from Kotite. And had an unexpected 9-7 season in '97, then really built the team to what it should have been in '98. They went 12-4, but it also kind of laid the groundwork for what, we would call the glory years, from '97 to 2010. I know it's slightly premature, but what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that there's a chance that Joe Douglas could really be building and laying the foundation for sustained success here for this Jets team with what he's been doing?
I mean, I don't think it's a crazy thought. I mean, again, it's hard to say if anyone could ever be what Parcells was, but those teams were built on a lot of very good deep drafts that laid the groundwork, and they would come kind of in waves every few years, highlighted by due to some weird Belichick Keyshawn trades where they had 4 first-round picks in one draft, which was kind of crazy. And that's when they got Ellis and Abraham and Pennington and Beck, and also got Coles in that draft. And that really laid the groundwork for a lot of their success. And I think the Jets have so many early round picks in this cluster of years that it could have the same impact if these picks turn out to be what they hope what we hope they're going to be, because you still look at next year, they have 2 firsts, they have 2 seconds, they have all their day 3 picks plus some in some areas, but most importantly, again, those 4 early round picks. And if they do what those picks with what they did those picks this year and those guys pan out, that's how you lay the groundwork for legitimate success over a 5, 10, 12-year period of time, especially if this coaching staff lives up to the expectations that we think they can. And a lot of it is going to, come back to Zach Wilson. And if he can play and be a second contract quarterback here, and they're going to give him every opportunity to do that. You're already seeing that with how they're drafting and, angling themselves in free agency. And they'll have the ability now next year in the NFL draft to fill the remaining holes that we keep talking about without having to use an early round pick on quarterback. Now they can look at center, guard, cornerback, maybe linebacker, because CJ Mosley is moving on, and have the premium capital and still the cap space to continue to build. So, the sustained success there was due to very good drafting, very good coaching. Quarterback play has always been very important. It was obviously a bit of a different league then, but they got a great year from Vinny Testaverde. They got a handful of good years from Chad Pennington and 1 great year. And that helps sustain success over that period of time. So I think in today's NFL, what they did this offseason looks a little bit like that. And I also think they're just due. These things eventually come around in the NFL. I mean, you're starting to see it with the Browns now where, they have arguably the best roster in the AFC, and they won a playoff game last year and were very competitive against the Chiefs in the second round. And they're not that far removed from being 0-16. So I think the Jets have the table set to be competitive and around 500 this year somewhat, and then compete for a playoff spot in 2022. And depending on how good Wilson is, will lay the groundwork for how serious of contenders they really are that year and the year after.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think they could have like a season that kind of mimics that 2018 Browns, where like they were in every game, they were frisky, they like basically had a chance to make the playoffs. I don't think the Jets are gonna make the playoffs unless Zach Wilson is literally a Pro Bowl quarterback and like looks like Justin Herbert. But I think that like they're gonna have a lot of hype and buzz, and I think Saleh's gonna get votes for Coach of the Year. I think that he's really gonna get this team to play better than they should, probably steal a game or two that they aren't expected to win, because typically that does happen in the NFL. And I think that they're just always going to be prepared. I think a lot of those mistakes that you were seeing, not using timeouts, which drove me crazy with Todd Bowles and Adam Gase. I mean, that was super frustrating as a fan. It's like, they don't carry over to the second half. Please use them. But I just think that there won't be those mental errors that you were seeing from those coaches. I think, like you said, he has the time management guy. I'm sure he has other people on the staff to help him. I think that he's going to show signs as a leader. And I think we're just going to feel very confident for the future. Maybe we might get a wild card in 2022. It's not really inconceivable to think about that if Zach Wilson really is what we hope he's going to be, even if it's not like full potential, but he shows that he can be the guy,
Yeah, I think, Joe, I think you hit the nail on the head with it. It shows how important drafting really is. Because they laid the groundwork early on in those Parcells drafts, early on, late in the 90s, early in the 2000s. But then on the flip side, you kind of started to see the writing on the wall in the beginning of the end at 2008, 2009, when they had those big swings and misses, and Vernon Gholston and Kyle Wilson and Vlad Dukas, and they would only make 3 or 4 picks in an entire draft, and where the talent on the team was enough at the time to really be okay with making mistakes in the draft because they were still good and competitive. But then once that talent started to either leave or regress, then, and that 2011 team implodes, then they're not getting the free agents coming in there, and you can kind of start seeing the decline of the roster. And then there's nothing else back there in the depths of the roster to build that up or to replace that. And then that's what, that's when the beginning of the end started to happen. So I think you're right, man. I think, Joe Douglas has shown his cards that he believes in building through the draft. They've stockpiled draft picks. I think they still have 10 coming up, 9 or 10 in 2022. So I really do believe that he's laying the foundation and that the Jets could be on the path here to, hopefully, sustain success here in the next couple of years.
Definitely. So, Joe, I know we only got a couple minutes left, but I think it's a good time to transition into Badlands, because I know, that's something that's been growing at rates that we didn't expect, when you first started just on the Podbean series with Connor in 2020. But two-part question. First part is, what made you guys decide to do Badlands and even like kind of grow it into the Patreon, what it's become today? And then I guess it's kind of like a follow-up going into 2021's, Badlands season. Like, what's something cool that like fans could really get excited about that's new and unique to Badlands going into this season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I had just been doing kind of the same thing for a long time here with Turn on the Jets. And, I think at a certain point you want to try something different and challenge yourself. So I have been kind of thinking that they were coming up on this 10-year anniversary of missing the playoffs, which is such a uniquely bad thing that I wanted to try something different and dive a little deeper into it. And Connor and I have been kicking around some bigger projects to do together. And it was really meant to just be sort of that one-off 10-part docuseries. And then we started getting a lot of questions about, well, are you guys going to like come back and like follow up on some of this stuff and do a weekly show? And based on the initial response, we started doing a weekly show, and we were really pleasantly surprised by how many people ended up following along on Podbean. And then we started looking for what is a better, more sustainable platform to continue to grow and do more than just audio, and also start doing some articles and some video, and Patreon made sense there. And since then, we've got back in the rhythm of writing a little bit. We're starting to do some video. And I think going into the season, we want to get video in the mix more to complement the regular ad-free podcasts and some of the docuseries stuff that we do. We'll continue with our articles. I like to write at least like once a week periodically, just to, get some thoughts out there. And I think we'll continue to mix in other things like merch and events. And it's been fun. It really has. It's definitely been a nice new challenge, and the response to it has been really encouraging. And it helps, again, obviously, that we have a crop of guys like yourself and everyone else who's working on Turn on the Jets to keep it in good shape, where I feel like I have to be like scrambling to do something for it every day. But yeah, it's been a really like fun, unexpected thing. I really thought it was just going to be this one-off like 10-part series we did. And just some of the different interviews and stuff we've been able to get, and some of the other conversations we've had has been cool. And I think we're going to, really continue to double down on just like the quantity of content we're doing, and getting some video in the mix. So excited to do it during a season where we're rooting for them to win and we're excited about the team, which was not the case last year. We were talking draft by week 3. So this year will be different. And I think we should be able to hopefully continue to sustain growth with it.
Yeah. I mean, all of us on Turn on the Jets obviously are, subscribers to the Patreon, and I plug it every week. And like I said, like the merchandise is really cool. Joe's obviously rocking the black t-shirt right now. I have the gray tank top that he retweeted out that I got the other day. So I'm super excited about it. But Joe, is there anything unique that you want to plug to maybe, tease for people who aren't Patreon subscribers, who maybe should join because of this, unique to this season that wasn't there last season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think beyond the weekly ad-free podcast, we are going to have another 2-part audio docuseries in August that will focus solely on Zach Wilson. We're going to do a lot more of the pre-game sort of Q&A live streams on a week-to-week basis, which we dabbled with a little bit last year when we were rooting for the tank, but that will be a weekly occurrence this year. So I think look out for the deep dive on Zach Wilson in August, and look out for that weekly live stream to go with the podcast every Wednesday, Connor's column every Thursday, and then my 12-pack, which will be there every Friday. And there should really almost be something up every day of the week, which is a pretty big change from what we were doing last year. It was really just like one post a week.
Yeah, I mean, the 12-pack is literally what got me to Turn on the Jets. It's my favorite thing that you used to put out there. And then obviously the 30-pack, which is usually right before the season. And then I know you did one like before, I guess like free agency or like the pre, everything. That's the best
hoping to get some more predictions right this year. Always trying to get the percentage up.
And we definitely got to incorporate more, Jets gambling picks and stuff like that. Yes. I know that's something that you've been talking about with us to incorporate into the site. So we'll definitely do that. I think with, Jets props, I think that'll be fun for this year. So like I said, guys, it's really worth the $5 or $3, depending on which tier you get. I mean, if you love the team like we all do, because if you're watching this, you probably are a fan, or maybe someone's family member like Steven or myself. But honestly, Badlands is awesome. I think it's high quality content. They're not going to sugarcoat things. They're going to give you real honest opinions. And to me, like when I want to hear about the Jets, and one of my favorite things is watching the post game, because I feel like they actually are fair and objective. Occasionally they're not, but Connor and Joe, it's awesome to listen and, soon to watch you guys a little bit more and read. So like I said, definitely subscribe. And, I always say at the end of the show, don't forget to subscribe to our show on YouTube, as well as the podcast feed for our show, Will's show, and then draft season when they return in December of this year. And definitely buy some merchandise if you're already subscribed to Badlands, because it's pretty cool if you like Bruce Springsteen and if you're a big Jersey person.
Amen. Appreciate the
Yeah.
plug. And this was fun, guys. We'll definitely do it again as the